Welcome to Problem Solve, the podcast where me and a special co-host solve all your problems really easily, probably.
Problems? Are you kidding me? I don't have any problems. Okay, I might have a few, but I can work on them with you. Come on.
Hello and welcome to Problem Solved. I'm Jeff Gunther, licensed professional counselor. So happy you're here. I'm talking to Julie McFadden. I've been following Julie on TikTok ever since I started TikToking myself. You can find her at Hospice Nurse Julie. Hospice Nurse Julie, that username is very similar to Therapy Jeff, where we just sort of like take our profession and tag our first name on the back of it. You might think it's not creative. You are correct. It's not. But it works. It's a trend. I'd like to think I started that trend. I'm going to take credit for that trend, even though maybe Julie did it before me. I don't know who started posting first. Either way, today I'm talking to Julie about death. I am obsessed with death. I have big death energy. Personally, cannot wait to die. I'd love to know what happens on the other side. I have a lot of very strong beliefs about what happens. I'm super looking forward to spirit world. I had to kind of like pull back in this interview a little bit so that I didn't like just talk about spirit world and all like the fun semi-spooky experiences she's had being a hospice nurse. We talk a lot, but I think that by the end of the conversation that I have with Julie, you'll feel maybe like a little more at peace about dying, possibly, and probably really motivated to buy her book, which comes out today, June 11, called Nothing to Fear, Demystifying Death to Live More Fully. Highly recommend. It's a really good book. So, enough about me. Go ahead, give me all the 5-star reviews. You can pre-order my book called Big Dating Energy. And maybe in like fall 2026, I'll come out with Big Death Energy. Okay, here we go. Hello, Hospice Nurse Julie. How you doing?
Hello, Therapy Jeff. Are you going to give me therapy today? Can you?
We can, if you want. We can just turn this whole episode into just therapy for hospice. Yeah, that's fine with me. We actually, I feel like you and I kind of sort of got like big time at the same time. Is that right? Like people started noticing us? Yeah, during the pandemic.
Yeah, and I feel. I mean, I think you probably run into this a lot. I'm sure. I feel like instantly connected. Like instantly, I'm like, oh, we're instantly friends. We're instantly connected. And I think everyone might think that about you, but I'm also one of those people. I'm in the crowd.
You are, but we are connected. I do feel a very special connection with Hospice Nurse Julie. Yeah. And I think that your content is, I always stop and watch it. It's always engaging. It's always interesting. It might be because like, I mean, I don't think I'm unique, but like I'm always curious about death and dying and what that's going to be like. And I think a decent amount about like what my last days are going to be like. So whenever you give your perspective or tell a story, it typically soothes me and makes me feel better about the end. Yeah. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. And thank you for watching. I feel the same about your content. I mean, I know we're not here to talk about it, but also like I'm a frequent person in your comments being like, I feel attacked. Okay. Okay, Therapy Jeff. I feel attacked.
Uh-huh. I love those comments.
And in all the right ways, because then it makes me think about just like who I am as a person. But I have a question, just really quick. Because I want people to be honest with me. Do I have any content that I do that it doesn't make you feel comforted, or that does make you be like, ugh, or you know?
Well, I think that like I personally can like I'm just naturally a very squeamish person. So if you ever like start to talk about details or bump up against like more details or something, if I could like imagine something that feels like kind of gross and uncomfortable. But I don't think you talk too much about like the gory details of it, do you?
I can. I mean, some of those real life, like the real life actively dying videos can be, I mean, I don't think they're gory, but definitely. I catch some heat for. I mean,
Do
on
you?
on the social platforms, I catch heat. Like they try to warn me that they're going to ban my account when I do that.
Hmm.
So it can be a little gory, but I personally think they're the most important ones.
Why do
But
you
my
think
sister's
that?
the same way. My sister's the same way, Jeff. So that's how
Yeah.
she feels.
Why do you feel like they're the most important?
Because I think people knowing what death actually looks like can really help prepare them for the moment so they
Hmm.
don't associate what they're seeing with suffering. Because generally speaking, if you don't know what dying looks like, or at least this type of dying I'm talking about, it can feel very, very scary, very, very heightened, very, very chaotic. And I
Hmm.
think the better we prepare for that and really know what it looks like and know why things are happening, we can be a little more present and maybe less like in a flight or fight response.
Hmm. Yeah.
Because most people regret once someone dies, like how they acted or how it was. And so I think if we can kind of prepare and know what it really looks like, we can better be present for that moment.
Hmm. Yeah, that
Mhm.
makes sense. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. I feel, but there's also like kind of like this, like, well, I agree with that. Uh, and I think that like that would be really helpful for everybody to get like more details. But there's also like, well, but that dying, when am I going to actually do that? Probably not for a while. So like when I get closer to it, maybe that's when I'll start like really getting into all the details. But that might be a mistake.
Yeah, I mean, I get it though. You have to kind of. I never think it's too late. I never think it's too early, personally.
Yeah.
But also, like, I got to meet people where they're at. Some people are slower learners than others, so some people might not need it right until it's right in their face.
Sure.
Some people maybe are a little more of a slow burn. So I think it depends. And I try to like. I think it's important to not force it down because people don't like that. I don't. Someone tries to make me learn or deal with something right then. So, I mean, I think the sooner the better. But I get it.
Yeah. Well, what got you into this work?
Being a hospice nurse in general.
Yes.
Yes. So I was an ICU nurse. So I became a nurse kind of like on a whim a little bit. I was just immature and my friends were doing it. And there were some things that happened that got me interested in becoming a nurse because it was my second degree. My first degree, therapy, Jeff, is in psychology.
Oh, look at you.
And I worked in a mental health hospital as a behavioral counselor for not many years. I was very young and a drug addict, by the way. And I was like literally doing drugs in the bathroom and then going and running a group.
Oh, man. That's tricky to do. Or were you able to like pull that off? Okay.
I was able to pull it off. And I don't recommend.
Impressive. Yeah.
So I was doing that. But and then I became a nurse. And once I became an ICU nurse is when, like, in nursing school, fell in love with it. I fell in love with biology and physiology and pathophysiology. I love it. Became an ICU nurse. I had a whole plan ahead of what I was going to do, which was get more degrees and do different things. And then I became like very aware how hard nursing was as an ICU nurse. And after a couple of years, I was like killing my soul. I hated it. I hated it.
Yeah. What was so hard about it?
You had to like hurry up and care. I was not good at hurrying up and caring. I needed to like care, or it's like I couldn't. It was like very task oriented, and of course you were doing great things. Like we were saving lives to some extent, and I was learning a bunch. But like my personality, it just didn't go well with my personality. It was too fast paced. It was too hurry. There was like no time to like really personalize anything. At least that's how it felt for me. So after a couple of years, I really started being like, damn, this is hard and depressing. And people are alive, but like, are they? And why are we not talking more openly with the family about what's truly happening with the patient? And even if they do get out of the ICU, they still have a terminal cancer that no one's addressing right now. Like a bunch of things that were just didn't seem right to me. So I still stayed there for like 8 years. Don't recommend. So it was like tough. I didn't leave right away. But through those 8 years, I kind of grew my voice and started understanding more about death and dying and how to talk to people about it. And that grew me into wanting to become a hospice nurse. And then eventually one day I just did it. and I just became a hospice nurse. And then that's when my world opened up and my brain exploded.
How long ago was that?
That was 8 years ago.
8 years ago. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did your brain explode?
Because I was so used to doing so many things, like do this, help this. This is why this is happening. When this is happening, we do this to intervene.
Mm-hmm.
And when you stop doing that as a hospice nurse and you just sort of focus on symptom management, of course, because there are symptoms with diseases you're dying from. It was just so fascinating to see how little we had to do for someone to die well and peaceful, and to see how like the body really does have like built-in mechanisms to kind of help us prepare for that. And for the most part, it wasn't a thankless job. And I know we don't get into healthcare to be thanked, but it does feel pretty damn good to like feel like you're really helping people on a daily basis, and you can see it you can see it in their eyes, you can see it on their face that you were like helping them. So it was just mind blowing to see that we didn't have to do much to like really help. And I realized I loved connecting with people. So the time I had a lot of autonomy with hospice nursing. I could spend a lot of time with people for the most part. You really connect with them on like many levels, and people are just fascinating. Like their lives are fascinating, hearing what means. And then there's something about death too, that kind of brings out vulnerability a lot of the time. So people are willing to be like vulnerable with you. And on just a pure biological level, like that, seeing the biology of death and how the body can help us die was truly, truly mind-blowing and fascinating. And whether you believe in like what comes after death or not, like that still to me feels miraculous. Like even if we die and there's nothing, like I'm okay with that, because it still feels like a spiritual experience, because like our bodies are so fascinating, and they like truly are built to die, and they help us do it. And it gives me comfort. That gives me the most comfort.
Yeah, I've never even thought about that. Well, how do they help us die?
So generally speaking, our bodies have like built-in mechanisms that kind of know if it's truly getting towards the end. It'll turn off most of the time. I know there's gonna be people here being like, that didn't happen for my grandpa. So most of the time, though speaking, it will cut off the want and need for food. So you stop eating most of the time, or eating very little. So you're not like starving to death like people think. It'll cut off your need and want for water. So your body will stop wanting water for the most part. They still want you'll still want your mouth moist, because a dry mouth is uncomfortable, but generally speaking, you're not going to feel like thirst. Your calcium levels will rise, which makes you really sleepy. So your body starts kind of almost going into like a hibernation mode of like sleeping all the time, not eating and drinking, sleeping all the time, not eating and drinking, slowly as the time goes on. And when that happens, your body can go into ketosis, which releases endorphins that make you feel good and dulls pain. And I can say this over and over to you, right? But there's something to it when you're seeing it over and over, like seeing this happen for people. Yes, there's certain diseases where we had to manage pain, manage shortness of breath, manage nausea. And like there are some diseases that aren't pretty, right? But generally speaking, when those things are controlled, the actual, like the shutting down of the body, is very peaceful and very natural, and you don't have to do anything. And I think that's what makes most people uncomfortable, is because we're so used to doing, especially if we think something's wrong. You know, we got to do. What do you mean you're not going to do anything? You're just going to let them sleep all day, you know? And that's the hard part. It's like, yes. Yeah. Let them sleep all day. Like, are they clean and safe? Like, let them sleep. And the more you allow that to happen, the better the person usually goes and feels and lives while they're still alive. And just sort of seeing that day in, day out, and me, even myself, learning, because I was a doer. I'm still a doer. But like as an ICU nurse, that's all you're doing is doing shit. Right. And to see how like we didn't have to do that. And people died very well and peaceful. It's amazing. It's miraculous, which is such a weird word to say, but it does. It felt miraculous. It was like, what's going on here?
Yeah, it sounds like if you can like create an environment for the body to do what it needs to do, then it'll sort of like naturally start to shut certain things down and guide you into death. And if like, it sounds like one of your biggest jobs is to like prepare that setting and that environment so that it can like do that in a natural or healthy way or something.
Right.
Yeah. Huh.
Mhm.
What can I do like starting now to make sure that it's like I have like the easiest sort of like least suffering uh and like when I start to like die, if I go into like hospice, like how should I be treating my body? What should I be doing right now?
Okay, amen to this. So I think the biggest, I don't know about like how you should treat your body. Generally
Yeah.
speaking, what I can say is because a lot of it's like existential stuff. So I'm the same
Mm,
way. So I'm speaking to myself when I tell you this advice.
okay.
In general, people who are willing to be flexible, learn how to be flexible with who they are, how they are, what their life looks like, being able to change.
Hmm.
So, like, maybe your apartment doesn't work for you anymore because there's a bunch of stairs and you can't do stairs anymore. Most
Hmm.
people are like, nope, I'm not leaving this apartment. And it makes it really hard to like care
I
for them at
see.
the end of life, right? So it's like this little but huge things like being able to be flexible and understanding that you're going to change, your body's going to change, you're not going to be able to do the things you used to do, most likely.
Hmm.
How can you live in a world and how can you spend your days being okay with that still? Like, what little changes can you make, either mentally or physically, where you can accept your new limitations and you can accept that you're going to need help from people? That's a hard one for me. Like,
Hmm.
I want everything the same and I want no one to help me ever. So believe me, I'm saying this to myself, but the people who are willing to accept that there are changes now, there are limitations now, they need to have, there's some change, they need to ask for help. Those people that can do that usually, again, live better. It's the same thing I'm going to say over and over again, but live better and die better. So today, in this moment, since we're not intimately dying,
Hmm.
learning that in our everyday lives here and now, like being willing to ask for help, being willing to be flexible, being willing to not be super rigid, preparing. That's another thing too. I truly try to, not in a scary negative way, but I really think about my mortality. Like I know I'm not going to live forever, and I truly contemplate that. And if I know that, let's just say I know it in 6 months, I'm definitely going to die. Truly
Hmm.
contemplating that, what would I do? How would my life change? And of course, you have to be practical because I'm not necessarily dying
Sure.
in 6 months technically, and I still have to work and pay bills and all the things. But
Right.
how can I use that information to kind of reframe my daily life? So I
Hmm.
think if I knew I was dying in 6 months for sure, I would be appreciative today in this moment that I had a healthy body that could eat and walk and move and feel good and
Hmm.
not have pain. And I could appreciate that I have like that I can like taste water and swallow water and appreciate the sun. And my sister might not annoy me as much. And I love my sister, but like things like that, because that is probably how I would see the world a little differently if I really knew I was dying. So I try to do that honestly on a daily basis, and I try to tell other people to do it too.
I like that. I mean, you're really kind of like coming from a very, psychological kind of like mental healthy place where like how do you it seems like when you're in the stages of like eventually getting close to death, you want to be able to like you don't want somebody to fight it. Like stop fighting it and holding on or maybe like being attached to some sort of pride or ego or I can fucking do this myself kind of bullshit. Like because
Mhm.
that will probably create even more tension and suffering and hardness, right?
Bingo. Yes.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would imagine that like you kind of mentioned this a little bit or like bumped up against it, but like the when like family members are watching their loved one start to like die, they're probably telling you to fucking do something, and you're already saying like you're kind of in the business of like not doing that much, just kind of like creating a safe environment. Um, But I could imagine that you probably have some pretty tense conversations with family members. Is that kind of like a regular daily thing, or are family members typically like kind of like understanding what's going on and allowing the process to take place?
It really depends. It's
Yeah.
a pretty daily thing. I mean,
Hmm.
most of the time, I'm kind of glad when people are like, do something, because that kind of gives me an opening to be like, let's talk. We need to. And the thing with hospice, and not all hospices, but the one I work for right now is amazing because I have the time to do that. These things take time. And when you
Hmm.
don't have the time, like in the ICU or in the hospital or in some hospices, if you're really busy, it's hard because it takes time to tell people what's going on and to have them see and understand. So
Hmm.
on a daily basis, I do feel like we're kind of putting out fires here and there and like educating people about like what they're seeing and what we can do, what we're not going to do, and why, because
Hmm.
that's the big thing about why. People want to understand like, what do you mean you're not going to give IV fluids? Why? You need to tell them why. Anyway, so and a lot of people are very understanding and kind of get it, and I still try to educate them too because it just helps. But I also read the room. I mean, there's just some people where it's like they got on hospice too late. They were unwilling to hear what they may or may not have been told by other people and doctors that it's the end. Who you don't know because you're just meeting them for the first time. But
Right.
and you get pretty good at reading the room. It's like I will still always try, but again, like if people are not hearing it, they're not going to hear it. If they're not ready, they're not ready. And
Hmm.
those are the hardest cases. Those are the days that I would go home and cry. Like it doesn't make me sad. I don't cry when people die for the most part, especially if it's like prepared and they were peaceful. But when it's like you can see that the family or the patient and the family are creating their own suffering and causing more of a problem and they really will not hear you, it's sad.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And there's so much like grief and anger and sadness and emotion that's coming up during that time. So I would imagine like it's pretty easy for them to like block you out and not let you in because they're so like hijacked by all the stuff.
Yeah.
Is there like, what do you think is like, what's the worst thing to die from? And what's like the best thing to die from?
Oh, I always feel bad saying this because anyone listening will be like, but to me, there are a couple diseases that are the worst. So I think
Yeah.
ALS is one of the worst. Or it's like
Yeah.
known as like Lou Gehrig's disease
Hmm.
so ALS is really bad. If I ever got ALS, I think I would take medical aid and dying. Like I would probably end up taking medicine to end my own life because I just wouldn't
Hmm.
want to do it.
Yeah.
So that's a tough one.
Hmm.
Glioblastomas are pretty tough. That's brain tumors. Usually
Oh,
happens in young people, and it's just hard because it's your brain, and your brain does a lot of stuff. And when there's tumors there, it messes things up.
hmm.
So there's several that are kind of bad, but those are the two that really stand out.
Yeah.
The best ones. So end stage kidney disease is pretty gentle. Now,
I've heard
the
that's
thing
that's
about that is that you like kind of have this long-standing like chronic illness, so that's not good because you've had to be on dialysis 3 days a week for 10 years, and so that's like that's a long road, and it can be difficult. But the end for that's pretty nice. You just stop dialysis and you go to sleep, and then you die within like 7 days.
really.
Yeah, I mean that's generally speaking, but kind of you kind of just most people say like I just want to go to sleep and I just want to fall asleep and die. That's how it is for kidney disease.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting. Good to know. Yeah. Are there like a lot of people that are struggling like on their deathbed with like unfinished business, like just in life, not like financially, but like unfinished business with like relationships and stuff? Like, is that like a pretty common thing that people are like having these regrets as they're starting to die?
I would say, generally speaking, people die the way they lived, and family dynamics don't really change just because someone's dying. So if you live in like a tumultuous, chaotic, dysfunctional family, and you yourself are part of the problem, You can have issues. Yeah. You can have like existential stuff and kind of struggle when you die. Not everybody, like not everyone, but that is people who like, have mental health issues or really refuse to talk about anything in life. Not just, if people who are unwilling to talk about the fact that they're dying usually have other things going on. They're not, they probably don't have the best interpersonal relationships. Like they're not usually. So I do see that causes issues at the end of life and makes things harder. And sometimes you can work on that, and sometimes you can't. It depends on how like deep seated and rooted it is, and if they're even willing. I had a patient, my very, very favorite patient though, had a lot of issues all through his life. Was a hoarder, tons of anxiety, what's the thing where you can't leave your house?
Claustrophobic, agoraphobic. Yeah.
So like a bunch of, like, I didn't have any friends or family, like a bunch of issues. And then for some reason, when he came on hospice, he was like, and the fact that he knew he was dying, basically, I think it's like relieved him of this. And he was so willing to allow us to clean up his house, have family come in, like do all the things. He's one of the few people I've seen that like, we didn't have to do much intervention. He like, for some reason was ready and willing to change. And he had a really great last 9 months of life. It was amazing. But that's very rare. Probably the only person I've seen that happen to. Most people, if they're like that, they're going to be like that while they die. And it's really hard.
Yeah. That was one of my questions is like, what typically is like the most popular emotion that one feels? Is it like fear, anxiety, relief, a peace, excitement, or is it just all over the board?
It's kind of all over the board, but I would say like fear and anxiety and peace are all whatever. They feel that the most. Like if anyone's going to be talking to me about something about how they feel, it's usually like, I was anxious and scared and now I'm not, or it goes back and forth. Like, do you know
what brings somebody into like a more peaceful space, or does it seem like it just sort of like comes to them? Like, how does that work?
That's another thing that I feel like is something that happens with the body. Like, I think our bodies somewhat know, like people seem to kind of get to a place, usually, not always, but get to a place where there is some form of acceptance. Generally speaking, I always just tell everybody to be as honest as they can be, as they're willing to be about what's going on with them. So like, even if you're really afraid or you're angry or, which is very common, like I always just say to like, say that, because even if you're saying a bunch of negative things about the fact that you're dying, that seems to still somehow loosen the grip of like those emotions. So people who are saying they're angry, saying they don't want to die, I think it's really hard for people to say like, I'm afraid to die, because they don't want to say that because they're afraid of their family being afraid. Like they don't want to tell their family that they're afraid. They want to be like, it's okay. I'm okay. I'm going to be okay. And I always encourage to tell someone, even if it's not your family, tell the social worker, tell the hospice chaplain, if that's actually how you feel. Because there's something about just saying it out loud that kind of loosens the grip. You don't have to come to terms with it. From what I've seen, it's like you just the verbalization of it all somehow brings at least a little bit of ease. And then by the very end of life, most people don't realize that people are not like giving these big monologues and then dying right then.
Right.
They've been unconscious for like a week. So the actively dying phase, which is the last phase of life, usually lasts a few days, and the person's unconscious. And by that time, they do generally seem peaceful. There is terminal agitation sometimes, which means exactly how it sounds. They just are agitated, but they're unconscious and they're restless and they're moving around and trying to get out of bed or whatever they're doing. And I think that can come with sometimes the disease they're dying from. Some diseases can cause more terminal agitation. And that I think can be personality too. Just someone who's I think about my mom. She is alive and well, but she won't be always. And if she dies that way, I feel like she's a happy-go-lucky person, but I think she is just independent, doesn't want to let go of things, super controlling, neurotic. And I think no matter what we do, she's going to be like, it's going to be hard for her to let go of that. And that can cause terminal agitation.
Sure.
Yeah.
Does it feel like, do people like almost all of a sudden become very spiritual? Like just to kind of like grab on to a belief system that feels a little more soothing than maybe there's nothing after this? Or do they come in with their spiritual beliefs and that's just how it is?
No, people definitely can become spiritual.
Yeah.
I think it's because, well, who knows why it's happening, but a lot of people will have experiences that make them become spiritual.
They'll have visions.
They have visions. I mean, the whole envisioning thing, or people have visions where they see their dead parents or an old pet or a god or an angel or whatever. That happens. I mean, I cannot tell you how many, honestly, it happens so much that it's like hard to even have stories because you hear it so much.
Yeah.
Like not an abnormal thing. And I'm not here to say why it's happening or if it's real, right? I just know that it does. And it brings people comfort.
Yeah. When that happens, do people like believe what they're seeing? Like, do they, I mean, maybe they don't even have to believe, but like, it sounds like they get relief when they have these visions and, they see them. I don't know. Do they see them as like true, like it's really happening, or like, oh, I'm fucking hallucinating? Like, how do they?
Some people are still like, oh, I'm hallucinating, but they don't care because it feels so real. They'll be like, they are like, it just felt so real. I don't know what it was, but it just felt so real, and it makes me feel better. And now I feel better about the whole thing. But it's usually an experience. Like I would say it's usually a spiritual experience, which most spiritual experiences usually kind of change you for a little bit, right? And make you think differently about life and death and all the things. And that's usually the case. So it's usually like in a spiritual experience, and now they feel and think differently. It's not usually like, and now I'm a born again Christian, and it's not usually like that. It's usually just very vague and very like, I was afraid, but now something has happened and now I'm not. And it's really comforting. And it happens so, I mean, that's another mind blowing thing that happened in my first year of hospice nursing that like, wow. And now that I'm more of an educator, even at my job, like I still do all the nursing stuff, but I spend a lot of time with families educating. And I ask them specific questions about just to kind of prepare them, because visioning is like literally a sign that we look for as nurses, because we know if you start visioning, you usually have a few weeks to like a month left, usually. So I will always tell that to families so they can kind of prepare themselves. And since I openly talk about it without being a weirdo and being like, this is what this is, I mostly just educationally talking about it. They will then share with me, oh, that's already happened, or, oh, that's happening now.
I see.
So now I hear about it even more because I'm educating about it.
Yeah, that makes sense. When somebody, I assume that you've probably been in plenty of rooms when somebody has actually like passed on and the moment comes. Is there like what does it energetically, physically kind of feel like, or is there any feeling for you when somebody like goes?
Yes, this is this is something that makes me feel like there is something more, whatever something more is, that I don't know that. But so when watching someone take their last breath, I think because it's not my grief, it's not my mom, I'm just sort of there helping facilitate comfort, hopefully. The thing that happens is like, it's hard to explain, but it feels kind of like time stands still. There's like an expansion in the room, I feel like. And it's really hard to find like English words or any words, I just know English. Like it feels sacred. It feels like a moment. The way I try to describe it is like when I've only seen, I don't have kids, but I've seen babies being born. and even like stranger babies, so that I don't even know the people, but I'm witnessing a birth, I cannot help but get overwhelmed, have like tears of joy, have a feeling of like, whoa, like that was insane how this freaking baby's here. Like, where did you come from? Like looking at this baby, like, where'd you come from, baby? You know? It's such an amazing feeling to me. That is how it feels when someone takes their last breath. It feels the same. It feels like, where did you go? You went, I mean, not to get like so trippy, but to me, it feels like I've always felt like I've been like homesick for a place that I like can't remember. And when I see a dying person take their last breath, and when I see a baby being born, I feel like that same feeling. We're like, oh, they're going to that place that I know, that I once knew. And again, like, what does that even mean? I don't know. It's just a feeling, but that's the feeling I get. And it's really comforting to me personally.
I would imagine. I mean, in the way that you're talking about these, like, I don't know, pretty big, powerful events and experiences, you're talking about it kind of like a nurse or like an educator, also like a human, as it like it affects you. But I would imagine that it like affects you. I don't know. I imagine it could affect you on like a really deep level of like your own spiritual beliefs and your own meaning of life and stuff that you'd probably, I would imagine that like if you didn't become a nurse or a hospice nurse, you might be having like different types of core beliefs or values in life. Do you think that like being a hospice nurse has really informed just sort of like your outlook on life and spirituality in general?
Yeah, I think what it has done is, I've been having a hard time. I just had this word, now I just lost it. What it has is reiterated. Like, I feel like I've always been like a seeker. Even as a little girl, I was like, Mom, why are we here? You know, where do we go when we die? Like constant, like total existential crisis since I've been like 5. Literally. And I've like gone through a whole thing with religion and like then deconstructing it and finding my own way, right? Outside of anything to do with my job. And I have my own beliefs there. And what my job has done is help kind of solidify, or not even solidify, because I'm always changing, but kind of like helps me see, it goes along with what I've been thinking anyway. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah.
Like the more I see
it reinforces it.
Like, yeah. The more I'm like,
yeah.
So it has had a profound effect on me, and it's not like the first time I've been thinking about it. I've definitely thought a lot about what the hell this is all about.
Yeah.
Why are we here and what's going on? Yeah.
It sounds like it could be kind of soothing, you know, to have these experiences with people, because it gives you a stronger belief or reinforces a belief that like there's something else after this. And maybe when we leave this like physical form, we do go back to like some sort of spiritual home. Yeah, that doesn't feel as horrible as being here on Earth. I mean, there's plenty of lovely things about being here, I guess.
Yeah.
But also not so much. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And the one thing that hospice has really taught me, I think, is that like, to me, the main life is all about connection. Like being able to connect to other people is like, is the most profound thing, at least for me. It's like, this is what it's about. That's what it feels like. When I really connect with someone, even if it's like, we just laugh at their house, like something happens and we both laugh. Like there's something magical to me about just that, being like, damn, that was awesome. I love them. And I love connecting with people. And this person's life is so amazing. Like I get to walk into people's homes who've like lived in LA for 80 years. They're from Mississippi. They bought a house in LA in the 40s, which is amazing. Their house hasn't changed since like 1960. They have shag carpet. They have like plastic on their furniture. Like, and you get to see all these amazing pictures around their house, and they talk about their life. And that is like this is what life is all about. I want to know this about you. And I'm so grateful that I get to. And I think that's like all that matters. That's all I want to do ever.
Ugh, that's amazing. Yeah, it just seems like you've been able to have so much like more gratitude for life, being a hospice nurse, and that's really sweet. So switching gears a little bit, I'm wondering, do you experience a lot of situations where, somebody's in hospice, they're getting ready to die, and there's like maybe like a family member wants to go to them and talk to them, but the person in like the who's in hospice, they're just like, no, I don't want to talk to this person. Like, is there a lot of like, oh my God, you're on your deathbed, I need to have a conversation with you, even though we haven't talked for 20 years? And then like, how do you facilitate that? Or do you call in the social worker to help you out with that? Like, are there lots of like final conversations that people are getting into fights about whether or not they're going to have it?
Yes.
Yeah,
Family
okay.
dynamics are very strong, and family dynamics definitely come up at the end of life. And some people are ready to resolve them. Some people aren't. Sometimes it's great, right? Because then we can bring everybody in and we can try to facilitate some kind of healing if everyone wants that. But like you said, people don't always want that. So
Right.
you have to, I personally am like really big on involving the social worker and the chaplain, because people always think, they hear the word chaplain and they're like, oh, we're not religious. I'm like, it's not about that. This person's just like trained to be like emotionally stable for you.
Yeah.
You just allow them in your house. But yeah, same with the social worker. So I'm really big on like bringing in the team. So if I see this, that's the first thing I say is like, of course, I won't be like, I won't talk to you. I'll do my best, but I always say like, we should do a family meeting. Or if you don't want to do a family meeting and you just don't want these people around you, because that's definitely a thing. We, of course, strongly suggest that they do what they want. A lot of people at the end of life, the last 6 months of life, you can start like kind of cocooning and not really being as social as you once were. So this idea of so-and-so's on hospice, now everyone let's go visit and say our final things because that's what we need, is not always going to happen, because that's not what they need. And we will play as much of a part as the family will let us. So a lot of families underutilize the hospice team. I mean, that's another thing I try to educate, so they understand that like, hey, if you're not having a good experience, if you have questions, if you have whatever, please tell us, because we don't always know. So generally speaking, though, we do help with that if it comes up and when it comes up.
Yeah, I can imagine like full on like family therapy sessions all of a sudden happening in these rooms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's great. And sometimes you're like, I'll leave a place being like, that is not going to get fixed in this, it's one of those things where you're like, this has been going on for 35 years. Like, I don't know if it's going to get fixed in one conversation.
Yeah.
So,
God. Yeah.
and people, I know narcissism is like thrown around, but like narcissists die, right? So like people with borderline personality disorder die. Not that they don't deserve love and care, but I just mean like it makes it difficult. It can make it hard. Like, because they're not mentally well.
Right.
So,
yeah, exactly. I feel like if it's important for someone to like have lots of visitors during this time, you probably want to make sure that you have like a big friend network, like a really big social network. Because family, you want family to visit you probably, but family relationships are like kind of like, they're very loaded, and maybe there's like anger that's not processed, whatever. But if you have like a really big social network, I would imagine that's like the way to go. So you can like have lots of visitors if that's what's important to you.
Yeah, if that's what you want. That's what you want.
But it seems like you're saying that like when you start cocooning, that's not really something you're craving.
I think too, if you don't feel very well. So I think that's what everyone kind of pictures it being, and by all means, for sure, sometimes it is like this big, like family comes and then there's a bunch of things going on, and that's beautiful and amazing. And I love it when it happens. And You don't always, even if you don't have pain, right? If your symptoms are controlled, you still don't really feel like yourself. You still are really tired. So it takes a lot of energy to like try to talk to people, and then people don't know what to say, and you don't know what to say. And so there's a lot of emotional things around it too that can make it extra difficult. Hence why I think it's really important to kind of talk about these things and talk about things before this is happening. So when it does happen, it doesn't feel as big or something every time where you have to be like, how are you? What, you know, and when you don't feel that great, it's just, you don't always have the energy to have a bunch of people around, and everyone's different. I know when I'm sick, I don't want a bunch of people around. I don't want, I feel sick, you know? So it just, everyone's different is my point. But I think people are surprised that it's not always this big, like kumbaya thing.
Right.
It's actually mostly not. Huh. It's still beautiful in its own way, but it's not this like, it's not what you see in the movies. Like I can't say it enough. I mean, the movies just do death and dying a disservice. End of story. Just not like that. Yeah. Are
people usually, when they do take their last breath, is there always somebody like a nurse or somebody there with them, or does that happen just on their own and most of the time?
Yeah, most of the time there is not a nurse with them. Most of the time it's just family, and sometimes no one. And people, families can get really upset about that because, you know, they're with them for hours and hours and hours, and they finally fall asleep, and they come back in to check on them, and they're gone. And they think, oh my God, they died alone. And I can see why they would think that. And I personally know that I think by that time, they're okay. You know, I don't know if they're even fully there anymore. Their consciousness isn't really there. It's basically, it's still, I can still see I understand why you'd have that pain that you weren't there. But I don't think personally that person's lying there being like, I'm alone and taking my last breath. I don't think that's happening. More of a body biological thing, just shutting down. But to say that most of the time nurses are not there. So just so family knows that you are going to likely be alone when this happens, and you can call us once it happens, but mostly nurses not there.
Yeah. And I mean, there's not much you can do or anything you can do, right? Like, so you don't have to be there anyways.
You don't have to be there. No.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, if you do it long enough, like because I've been a hospice nurse for 8 years, you end up being there, you know? And when someone's actively dying, which they can do for days, a nurse will be there every day kind of checking in. And a lot of times if I go and I do my check-in visit and I can tell, oh, they're probably going to die like soon, I'll kind of hang out. Just because like it gives them people comfort because they've never seen this before. So they want to know that the things they're seeing are normal.
Yeah, that makes sense. Has there ever been a situation where somebody included you in their will?
God, I wish. God, I wish, Jeff. You better believe it. No, I'm just kidding. No, that has not been a situation. And there have been times when I thought, you know what, I could really use this house in the Hollywood Hills.
Right.
No, I haven't been in a will. People have said stuff like that to me. And of course, you just have to be like, oh, stop. You can't do that. Well, I'm like, what's your lawyer's number? Just kidding. Just kidding.
Is there a lot of like discussion about the will with family members? Like, are they like fighting each other? Are they talking to the person who's in hospice, trying to get them to change things? Does that happen?
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, I don't know what it's like other places, but I'm in LA. So like I am like literally a hospice nurse on Skid Row sometimes where people are homeless and they're on hospice. Yeah. And then and then, you know, generational wealth, you know, $20 million homes. And that's when you see the fights, not you really only see the fights when there's a lot to gain from someone dying. And generally speaking, when like I've seen a lot of, you know, where it's like the grandparents had money, but then no one else really made money after that, like generationally. So like they're all kind of like living off grandma and grandpa's money. And then, they have this big house that like no one can really afford, but like the house is worth $5 million. So like, who's going to get the house and what's going to happen to the house? Who's going to sell it? Like stuff like that.
Like it's messy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sad.
Yeah.
You've talked a little bit in your content that like sometimes there's like a rally or a surge. What is that? What does that look like?
That is the number one most seen deathbed phenomena, by the way. It happens to one in 3 people. Okay. So it happens that often. We don't know why it happens, but it's basically just someone, it's called terminal lucidity is the real name. But it looks like someone's getting close to death. So they could be unconscious or mostly unconscious. And everyone thinks like, oh, the end's getting near. And then they suddenly have a burst of energy. And sometimes that can just look like having a really good day where they wake up and like say a bunch of things like, I love you. And I'm whatever, all the things they want to say, or they like wake up and say they're hungry and have like a big burger and maybe even get up and go to the bathroom, things like that. But it usually only lasts for a few hours, maybe a day, and then they die right after, or they go back into being unconscious right after and die soon after. It's kind of like the last hurrah. It's a lot of times it's missed, right? So people like don't realize that was the thing. They just thought like, oh, she woke up and she, like my mom didn't know what was happening. She woke up and had Thanksgiving dinner with her, and then she died a couple of days later. Wow. And she didn't know that was called like the rally until she saw one of my videos. She was like, I think Grandma Sheridan did that. I was like, what? Why didn't you ever say anything about this? So I think a lot of people don't know what's happening, but it happens quite often. So I always try to educate prior to it happening. So if it doesn't happen, that's okay. That's normal too. But if you do suddenly see your loved one who was quite ill suddenly be doing really well, I would like kind of keep it in the back of your head that you should appreciate the moment. Yeah. Yeah.
I get it. You wrote a book.
I did.
And I think you wrote a book. I wrote a book. I know a lot of other people that like a lot of other like TikTokers and Instagrammers that kind of like got a big following around the same time that we got a big following. Like lots of other people are writing books. And I'm very curious to see how all of our books do.
Right, Jeff? Me too. Because I don't know about you, but how it came about for me was like someone reached out to me and was like, do you want to write a book? And I was kind of like, nah, not really. I haven't thought about it. And they're like, we think you should. And then it just sort of happened. But they did help me see that like not everyone wants to watch a video about death and dying. People like to read. People want to read. So yeah, it'll be interesting. It was a lot of work. I don't know what you think, but it was a lot of work.
Can you tell us a little bit about your book?
Yeah. So I really do love it. I think it could, here's the thing. The reason why I was having a hard time with it at first was like, I know what kind of books I like to read, which are like storybooks. Right. And my book is not that. My book is not a storybook. My book is an educational book with stories in it. So it doesn't feel like just a straight up textbook. You know what I mean? And at first I was having a real hard time with that because I was like, who's going to want to read this? And finally someone helped me see you have to look at it like this is a resource. This is a resource for someone. So when I saw it like that, I was like, oh, that's perfect. That's right. People actually need this book. So I can feel good about it that way. It was more of like so I hope for it to be a book that is a staple for everyone because everyone's going to die. And the whole point of the book is to be a resource for you. So it is a book you could read cover to cover. You could open it and read the whole thing cover to cover and hopefully it'd be entertaining enough. Or you can just pick up, look at the chapters and say, this is what I need today. Today I need to read about this and read about that. Educate yourself so you can hopefully feel comforted through education. And then every chapter also has stories intertwined with it to like, again, not make it feel like a textbook. But it is supposed to be a death and dying, hospice, palliative care, disease-oriented educational book to help people at the end of their life.
Yeah. I mean, I would imagine that anybody should probably get the book and read it no matter where they are in their lifetime, but also maybe like buy it for your fucking boomer parents
I know.
that like are in denial.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it gives you to me, it gives you, for people who like to feel comforted about the end of life, it definitely gives you that. For the people who are like, no, I want to know step by step what the hell I'm actually supposed to do to prepare for this thing, it gives you that. And then my experiences through hospice and what I've learned about death and dying and why I don't fear death, hence the title, Nothing to Fear, which again, I originally wanted it to be normal to fear, just so everyone knows, because I feel like it's normal to fear death and dying, but I do get it doesn't have as much of a kick than Nothing to Fear. But I mean, the whole point is to help decrease fear around death and dying through education. And that's what I hope to bring to everybody.
I like that. Yeah. My book called Big Dating Energy, that was not the title that I came up with either. My original title was Date Great, where I was just trying to kind of make it really small, as little words as possible. And date great is kind of rhymey. And so I like that. And I even, in my book proposal, I wrote, you write your little intro and a few paragraphs and why this is a good book, whatever. And I was like, date great. And then my next book could be called Fight Right. Yada, yada, yada. Fucking the Julie and John Gottman. You know who the Gottmans are? They're a big deal in the therapy world.
They are? No, maybe if I don't know.
They've written 10 books.
I can't picture it in my mind. Go ahead.
They've written 10 books, and their most recent book that came out a few months ago is called Fight Right. And I was like, they somehow fucking heard me say this. But it went from Date Great to the next title was going to be Love in This Economy, but that didn't.
I can't. Oh God, that's so good. Okay.
They didn't like that. Yeah. And then the publisher came up with 10 different titles. And they're like, how about you choose from these titles that we really like? And one of those titles was Big Dating Energy. And I was like, that's it. I love Big Dating Energy. Let's go with that.
I love it too. And if it helps you, it seems like you came up that seems like something you would come up with. That seems
exactly. Yeah. So let's go with it. Yeah. I came up with it. It was all my that came from my brain. Okay, Julie, where can people find you if they want to learn more about you?
They can find me all over all social media platforms at Hospice Nurse Julie. So just type in Hospice Nurse Julie wherever you get your social media, and I will pop up. YouTube is my favorite, by the way. I feel like that's the most underrated one, but I love my YouTube channel, and I can really get into the nitty gritty of things, which I love it. But yeah, Hospice Nurse Julie, and then the book, it will be out June 11th. You can pre-order now. It's called Nothing to Fear, Demystifying Death to Live More Fully.
Nice. Look at you. Well, congratulations. Very proud.
You too. Congratulations to you. This has been great.
Yeah. All right. I'll talk to you later.
Okay. Bye.
Problems. Okay. We've identified my problems. Now it's time to get to work. Patience, communication. What did he say again?